If you really thought that all of this was true, that Great Britain was this horrifically racist place, and you really had pinned all your hopes on Meghan Markle being the savior, I'm sorry you're so stupid. Because that's too great a burden for anybody to bear, let alone an American actress who just showed up on the scene. How could you put that kind of burden on somebody who doesn't know anything about your country? And just because she showed up at the opening of one well in Africa doesn't mean that she cares about the plight of people of color. And just because she went to India and threw around some pads and tampons doesn't mean anything. Why are you so disappointed that this person who never showed you at all that she was capable of great change, why are you disappointed that it didn't work out the way you are saying you hoped it would? Why did you think that? Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is True Denise, and today we're going to be doing episode 3 of the Harry and Meghan documentary from Netflix. This is that documentary that came out several years ago, and so it's interesting to see how some of the things that they're talking about have aged, not even just with Harry and Meghan, which there was a time when this documentary came out, there was a ton of people who were on the fence about Harry and Meghan or just didn't know very much about them, who were super sympathetic to them after the documentary came out. And now I think that Harry and Meghan would be pressed to find 5 people who support them. But the other thing that's very interesting is this is the episode where they really go hardcore into the fact that Great Britain is a super racist place, that Meghan really never stood a chance because they have been as terrible as it's possible to be. Like if you thought the American South was bad, you just don't know British history. This is where we talk about Harry needing to repent for being a white person, and where he talks about how he, his greatest desire is basically to become an anti-racist, and how what he really needs to do is educate himself and deal with his unconscious bias. Well, a lot of the things he's talking about were put forth by Ibram X. Kendi, D'Angelo in her book White Fragility, and a lot of the things that Harry is saying are like straight from the playbook. And interestingly enough, just recently, Ibram X. Kendi was eviscerated in the New York Times as being a complete charlatan. So it's just interesting that 2 years after this documentary comes out, none of the ideas that Harry is so desperately putting forth really hold much water anymore. Like people see it for the race-baiting foolishness that it was. Anyway, we are going to talk about that. Probably not going to focus on that a whole lot because I think it's just boring and useless. But we definitely do have to talk about some of it because some of the pictures that they edited in to prove their point were very erroneous. They were trying to talk about how Buckingham Palace and everywhere that Meghan went would have been covered in pictures of slaves and statues depicting people with like very dark skin, white eyes, big red lips, like the stereotypical minstrel look. And they show us a ton of different pictures that would support what the person talking is saying. But then come to find out these are all works of art and things in museums, historical things that can be found not anywhere near the royal family. But they want you to believe that the things you're seeing were things Meghan had to deal with every day. Every time she walked the halls of a palace, there was a statue of a slave. There was a painting of a slave. So it's just like there's so much dishonesty and deception in this documentary, and we're going to talk about that. But let's just go ahead and get started. If you are new to this channel and you like the Harry and Meghan stuff, I did Spare when it came out last year, and I did Revenge right after that. So if you like this content and you would like a much more detailed look at some of the scenarios we're talking about, Revenge would be a great place for you to start. And then if you just like a laugh, Spare was hilarious. We had a great time reading Spare. It was the first book I ever did on my YouTube channel, so it's kind of clunky as far as I think I've sort of maybe, hopefully, grown a little bit as a presenter, but there's some good laughs there too. So watch at your own risk. All right. Harry and Meghan, episode 3. The introduction is all about their engagement. So you'll recall from the last episode, they had just gotten engaged, and now that's where we pick up. They begin with Harry and Meghan presently being interviewed about their engagement. Meghan's got this whole attitude like, it's so hard for me to think about myself in that situation because I was so ignorant about what I was walking into. And you watch the footage of her on the engagement day. I mean, she can't stop smiling. She's got like a hanger in her mouth. I mean, she's just like, And you would be, like, you're getting engaged to a prince, supposedly the great love of her life, who has brought out all kinds of playfulness and whimsy in her. They're like totally best friends, you guys. And so I don't blame her for smiling, for being giddy in the engagement video. I'm not here to mock that. But what I'm saying is that for Meghan to presently be acting like there was so much pain and sadness behind my face, I don't believe that. There wasn't. What are you talking about? And she keeps trying to say that she's like, yeah, well, I mean, we came in after the photographers took our pictures outside, and then we had to come in and do the interview. And it was an orchestrated reality TV show is what it was. And I'm like, you mean you're a famous person where your PR staff told you, hey, they're probably going to ask these kind of questions and tried to prep you for that? And she keeps trying to say that she was controlled. She was controlled in that entire environment. The person interviewing her doesn't seem to understand what it is that she's trying to say she was controlled to do. And Meghan gives examples like, well, yeah, they said they were going to ask me about the ring. Well, of course they would. It's an engagement interview. Like, why is that controlling to you? That they're trying to give you some ideas of what the interviewer will ask you in the engagement interview that's going to be on TV. Just like Charles and Diana had to do. Just like William and Catherine had to do. Like, this is something everybody does. You get engaged and then you do the interview about the engagement. Like, this isn't like they created a new category for you and Harry and made you sit down and parrot all these ideas that weren't yours. It's literally you just telling about your engagement, like any engaged couple would want to do. So what's the problem here? And the interviewer, the present day interviewer, doesn't seem like she's quite comprehending what it is that Meghan is heated about. So Meghan finishes it by saying, look, what I'm trying to tell you is that we weren't allowed to tell our story. We were not allowed to tell our story. They kept telling us what we should say, and we couldn't tell our story. But I don't get that. What story were you wanting to sit down and tell? Because we've watched 2 episodes so far, and nothing that has happened in the 2 episodes was anything that was a revelation to me. There was nothing that happened in those 2 episodes that she didn't get to explain or talk about in that sit-down interview about the engagement. What did she want to talk about? What scandalous moment did she need to let the British public know about? Was it that she didn't like Straight Outta Compton? Because even if you didn't like that, the engagement interview wouldn't have been the time to talk about that, right? This is supposed to be a joyful and exciting time, not where you would sit and list any grievances that you could possibly have, And so I don't get what it is that she thinks she didn't get to say, but she says we didn't get to tell our story. And Harry pipes in,
yeah, that's been the consistency, hasn't it? There's been nothing consistent about any of this, but the one thing that has been consistent is that we haven't been allowed to tell our story.
And, Meghan ruefully laughs, like, yeah, that's it. We just haven't been able to tell our story until now. So then begins the very sad, dramatic World War II music where somebody's running away from the Nazis. Like, we have the super, super, super poignant soaring strings and pathetic piano. And after we've been properly emotionalized, we get to the beginning of their story. We are immediately plunged into the world of racism, where they want to say, after the soaring strings and, sad piano music, that who would have dreamed that Britain would have a black princess? And as soon as they said that, I was like, oh, geez, how am I going to get through this? I'm not saying that there is no chance whatsoever that there was not, that there was even one person who said something ugly and hateful. Probably. In the world of the internet, there's a ton of people. That's what trolls are. They just say hateful things. I'm sure on the internet you could find any number of disgusting statements said about Meghan. But in everyday life with real people, real humans, not bots that have been programmed to say whatever to whoever, I just don't think that she experienced much actual racism. I don't believe it. But they really want you to know that because she'd come to Britain, there was no hope for her to escape the racism that is boiling under the surface of every interaction with anybody that you have ever met in England. They want to let you know that in 1807, slavery was abolished. So yeah, that seems like a really long time to not be racist. But, hold your horses because they still are. And even though in the 1830s, slavery was abolished not just in England, but in the entire empire, and even though that might seem like a really long time ago, And even though that would seem like they were the first country to have actually taken this evil by the throat, don't give them too much credit, okay? Just don't, because they were into it at one point. So that means that they're still evil. Even though they aren't being evil now and haven't been since the 1830s, you should know that it was part of who they were a long time ago. Can you ever really trust anything or anyone that has ever been evil before? There's no such thing as redemption. So get that idea out of your head. I think that the thing that, all joking aside, I think it's just sickening that a country could do something as monumental and historically important as not just abolishing slavery in their own country, but in the entire empire that very much relied on the economics of slavery, that they would abolish it and then help other countries to do the same. I'm shocked that they are acting as though that isn't the thing to celebrate. It's like if you had a family member who was a drug addict, and like a really bad drug addict, who had lost their kids, lost their wife, was in a gutter, and then made the decision to get their life not only in order, but became so profoundly in charge of their own world and in their life that they decided to help other people also no longer be addicted. And then all you could ever do when you saw that person would be to say, remember when you were in the gutter? Remember when you didn't have a wife or kids? Remember when you were bankrupt and had nothing but a heroin needle stuck in your arm? Remember that? Like, you would just be astounded at anybody who would not allow this person to have grown and not celebrate the growth, and not only the growth, but the support of others. That's what I don't understand about this continual need to say, but one time, back in the day, 250 years ago, things were terrible. Yeah, a lot has changed over the course of time. And I'm not saying that a person, like, as far as history goes, yes, learn the entire history, but to always need to go back to the worst of it, to act as though nothing has changed because one time it had been really bad, is ignorance at the highest level. And it's so shockingly historically dishonest that I can't believe these people would call themselves historians. All right. Well, then they want you to know, though, that the real, what you might not know, since, you have gone to schools in which they really harped on about how slavery was abolished. What you might not realize is that during the abolition of slavery, they actually paid the plantation owners money to stop owning slaves. They paid those people money. They compensated them. Can you believe they would do that? Can you even imagine a world in which people would be compensated for giving up the way of life that had economically supported them in favor of a new change? This is the thing that's so dumb about it. Yeah, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be paying people for the slaves that they'd owned. We would just let the slaves go free. But reality is, everyone isn't going to simultaneously find the same moral compass that you have found. And if you want to turn the wheels of time towards positivity and towards change, you're going to have to compensate people for what they're giving up in order to change the system that has been currently running. Economically, you can't just say, give up your slaves and then that's it. They wouldn't have done it. You have to give people a reason to see your way. And if that means that money has to change hands, we will pay you to no longer have slaves. What is the big revelation here? Okay, enough of this history lesson. Let's move on to the story we actually came for. Okay, well, about 8 minutes in to this little documentary, because we're going to go back and forth between the Harry and Meghan story and racism. We're going back to the Harry and Meghan story. 8 minutes in, we've got the second lie of the show. The first lie was that they hadn't been able to tell their story, and it's like, what story did you want to tell? Literally nothing has happened yet to you guys. But the second lie of the episode is that when Harry and Meghan had to do their first royal walkabout, Meghan was clueless as to what that even meant. She's like, I didn't even know what they were talking about. I hadn't even seen any pictures or videos about, like, what is a walkabout? I don't know, Meghan. Why don't you break the word down? Walk about. What could that possibly mean? Well, even Harry looks a little hazy, like, I don't know, like, A walkabout? You walk about and talk to people? What? But Meg's a real brainiac, you guys. She's the smartest person in her class. But the lies continue because Harry's like,
I tried to tell her how it was supposed to be. You walk around and you shake hands and you do some glad tidings and whatnot. But the thing that I didn't know about, and the thing that we were so confused about, was the fashion element. I didn't know what to tell her about the style.
Meg jumps in. Yeah, it was so confusing because I didn't know what designers to wear. I didn't know what I should look like. I had no help whatsoever. Nobody ever came to my aid for any reason. And, it'd be 5 minutes before we're supposed to be walking out the door and I'm changing outfits and I'm putting on earrings and I'm saying, I don't know, is this a British designer? I don't know if this is a British designer. I just ordered these online. Are these going to be okay? Then I'm trying to zip up my dress. The zipper break.
Yeah, the zipper broke at the 11th hour.
So we're trying to figure out what to do about that.
We decided to use a safety pin.
So we're just walking out of the house. I've broken out into a sweat. I'm just so stressed out.
It was so ridiculously hard to figure out what to put Megan in because, everyone's going to just critique her constantly. I didn't know what to do.
I didn't know what to do either. So they're just creating this whole scenario. It's like, how in the world do you have a royal event and 5 minutes before it's the montage scene from any 80s movie where you're trying to figure out what you're going to wear? Stop it already. Stop it now. Okay. Well, I think the thing that continues to confuse me and baffle me about what the point of this documentary is that as soon as they go on the walkabout, we get all this film footage of people being interviewed about, why are you here? What do you think about Meghan? And everyone is elated. They love Meghan. And then after she's done the walkabout, we get more footage about, well, how do you think she did? And everyone's like, she looked fantastic. Her clothes were so on point. We're so excited. We've got this mixed princess. That means their kids are going to be mixed. That's so cool. Everybody is elated by the newness of Meghan Markle. And everyone thinks it's so awesome. Everything about her is so awesome. So I don't understand what the point of this documentary is. Like, what are you guys talking about? It's so disjointed. The two narratives are so disjointed. Who are these racists that they say were just popping out of alleys every time she turned around? The media does not count as reality. Does anybody get that? And whoever made this documentary gave way too much credence to how much people believe what they read in the media. A bunch of race baiters trying to get people to whipped up about a non-issue. When you're trying to sell newspapers and magazines, you want to get racy headlines that'll get people to buy your paper. Everybody knows that. Okay, but the thing that should have been focused on was the talk in the streets, how much people were excited and loving Meghan. And for Harry and Meghan to have combed through every online source, every stupid tabloid, and choose to believe that that is what people thought or felt is ridiculous. Why didn't they spend more time looking at the footage where people were supporting them and just be like, I'm going to choose to believe that? Because that's what the literal people on the street are saying. Okay, well, the documentary sort of switches to present day. It's a real sort of casual time with the interviewer. They're actually still prepping for the real interview. Meghan's getting her makeup done. Harry's sitting off to the side playing Elton John, Benny and the Jets. And we have the interviewer going, hey, you guys, I have a question. What is even a royal correspondent? And you get the feeling when you watch the documentary that this casual moment where the interviewer is asking this just like off the cuff question as they're all getting ready is as staged as any of the other interviews that they've ever done. She wants to know, can just anybody call themselves a royal expert? And Harry says,
well, it's a title newspaper journalists use to lend credibility to a story, but anyone can be a royal correspondent. And, you won't believe this, they get paid for it.
Yeah, Harry, it's called a job. Some of us have them. It's how the everyman puts food on his table. But Harry wants you to be just as shocked about the fact that these royal correspondents would be paid for it as he is. And then he goes on to say that
the press pack of royal correspondents is essentially just an extended PR arm of the royal family. So, a bunch of charlatans and shysters, They do officially work for the newspapers, and officially the royal family works with them, but, it's just a whole team, a whole gang of losers.
And the thing that I don't understand is, I never got what he was saying. He kept saying just anybody could be it. But no, like you work with the royal family and for a newspaper. It's not just like somebody with a vlog. It's not like somebody on Facebook, updating you with like information about the royal family. This is a paid position with a newspaper who works with the royal family. So he never made his point. And then we get into like the whole like let's cry and bemoan the fact that he's been born into a family where you basically have to pose because the taxpayers have paid for it. So that's really hard for him. They break down what the Royal Rota is, it being the system of certain media who are allocated slots to cover members of the royal family. And no matter what they've written before, they're still allowed to keep covering people. And Harry wants you to know
that this family, my family, is exploited at every turn of the way. And our trauma is their story. And our narrative is theirs to exploit. So, it's been really a difficult life because I didn't choose this. And I'm always being attacked. And my trauma is constantly being rubbed in my face.
Well, Harry, I feel like I would love to send Harry a copy of the book Unbroken by Laura Hildebrand about Louis Zamperini, the Olympic athlete who was a World War II bombardier who crashed in the Pacific and managed to stay alive on a boat for 47 days and then was interned in a Japanese prison camp and beaten brutally every day for years, and yet somehow managed to come out the other side with as much hope as anybody you could have ever imagined. And yet somehow he's doing all right. Anyway, the person who really got on my nerves in this entire thing, second only to Harry and Meghan, was this individual named James Holt, who apparently worked for them at some point, and he is just a groveling mess this entire episode. He is so pathetic. And he keeps talking about how, what he did when he was working for them and how sorry he is for it now. And he says things like, well, one time we were doing a walkabout and the press said to me, oh, Harry used to clown around for us a little bit more, and could you get him to do something? He doesn't perform for us anymore. And I'm ashamed to say this. I truly am ashamed to say this, but I walked up to Harry and I said, could you do a little something? Sometimes we have to play the game. And I mean, I regret that. I rue the day that I did that. I know that I contributed to their pain. It's like, you're contributing to my pain, James, because I just need you to grow a backbone and be fine with what you did and said then. It's going to be okay, man. And you coming, like, is your whole life going to be one thing after another that you regret? Because in a couple of years' time, you're going to regret doing this interview. Anyway, the reality is, okay, I'll take a brief break for fairness. Harry and Meghan's situation would have had some of its challenges. And I do understand what Harry's saying when he says, I was born into this, I had no choice. You're right, you didn't. But you did have the choice to leave anytime you wanted to. Nobody was making you stay. You wanted to make your own terms. You wanted all the perks and none of the difficulties of living a royal life. But this isn't like someone who's been born with a twisted leg or, a broken spine and can never walk. You can change the trajectory of your life if you want to. Anytime you want to just say, I'm done, do it. Then we get Meghan's friends weighing in on life. And they say that not only was Meghan being harassed, but also them. And they say that they had not realized what sort of scrutiny she would be under. They were shocked by that. But the thing that really surprised them were how there was people following them everywhere they went. And not just them, but also their moms too. Like, people were coming after their moms and asking their moms what Meghan was like when she was a kid. And like, one mom actually said that Meghan was really into the royal family, but like, that wasn't even true. So somebody made that kind of stuff up. Like, that was a lie. So that was hard too, to have to see Meghan going through all of that. They also want to let you know that Doria was being stalked. But see, Doria had conscience. She had a moral compass, unlike Thomas Markle, who we're going to find out about later. And apparently one time, this guy drove alongside Doria and rolled his window down and said he just wanted a story about Doria. And Doria says that she's not that kind of a parent. And she wasn't going to sell a story about her daughter. And so she said no. So note that. Meghan says that the British tabloids really wanted to build a narrative about how her Black family was chaotic. And that was just super unfair because it wasn't her mom who was chaotic at all. In Meghan's words, her mom was quiet, classy, and just there, unlike her father's side of the family, who was not that way. Then that really leads us into the whole Markle family debacle. Now, Meghan says that contrary to what stupid Samantha wants to tell you, she didn't even know that girl, like not even a little bit, that she had moved out of her parents' house when she was 2 and she and her mom went to go live together. And then her dad went off and lived by himself. And sometimes she'd go and spend some time with her dad. But those 2 older kids of his, Samantha and Tom Jr., never even saw the likes of them at all. And Meghan wants you to know that not only does she not know Samantha, she doesn't even know her middle name. She doesn't even know her birthday. She doesn't even know anything about that old kook. And here she is coming out and saying that Meghan is the pushy princess. Like, how dare her? Meghan doesn't even know her middle name or birthday. So she definitely doesn't know this person at all. So we're supposed to believe from Meghan's narrative that she doesn't know Samantha. She has never had any kind of relationship with Samantha. Samantha tries to say that she helped raise Meghan, and Meghan's like, that is such a categoric lie. That's never happened. I don't know this person at all. She's just globbing on now that I've become famous. All right, so if that's true, this is just some relative that she barely knows, she's just sort of heard of in the background of her life. This next part of the story makes zero sense to me. We are now introduced to a character named Ashley. Ashley is the daughter of Samantha, so she is Meghan's niece. Ashley says that when she was 6 years old, she was taken from her mother and raised by her paternal grandparents because Samantha couldn't properly care for her, and that she had really no relationship with her mom after that. And then about 2007, she rekindled a relationship with her mother and she was reintroduced to her mother. And when she was, according to Meghan, her dad had said to her, "Hey, Samantha found her daughter." And apparently, Meghan says to her dad, "Oh wow, Samantha found her daughter? Does she have an email address? I want to email her too." And that then followed this long email exchange where they would write each other 3 times a week, these long emails. And that over the course of time, Meghan ended up entering Ashley's life and playing all these roles in her life. Maternal role, best friend role, sister role, aunt role, all of the female roles Meghan played. And Ashley is interviewed and says these things about Meghan, that they had this really deep relationship. And at the time, Meghan says she was on Suits, and she says that she took Ashley on vacations with an S. Ashley only mentions one vacation, which is a time they went to New Orleans and listened to some live music and ate and drank too much. But what we are supposed to get from this is that these two were super tight, and that this really meant a need for both of them, because Meghan says her whole life she wanted a sister, and now she had kind of found that in Ashley, and Ashley really, I guess, needed a strong female in her life to play both mother, best friend, aunt, and sister. But you guys, how did this relationship even get started? Am I the only person who doesn't understand how or why you would want to email the daughter of somebody who you don't even know? I mean, according to her, she didn't even know Samantha. Samantha was absolutely a zero person to her. She only knew the name and she met the face one time in her remembrance. But then she wants to start this long, intimate email exchange with Samantha's daughter? BS! That doesn't make sense. Have you in your entire life been desperate to go email with somebody you don't know? Have you ever in your whole life thought, oh, I don't even know this person. They seem to have found their estranged child. I want to start a long email relationship with that person so that I can then become their mother, sister, aunt, best friend that they never had. Does that not strike you as super manipulative? In my mind, it kind of seems weird that you would want to develop this strong bond with somebody who you don't know. The whole thing's weird and wild to me. I don't get it. I can't make sense of it. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because Meghan's lying. Okay, she did know Samantha. She did grow up with Samantha. Samantha wasn't a stranger to her. And by the way, may I just say, that's pretty wild to me, on a complete side note, that you would not know the middle name or the birthday of your half-sister. What's that? What's the story there? Like, you wouldn't even know their middle name of your half sister? Maybe it's hard to remember birthdays sometimes, but you don't know your half sister's name? I don't get that. I feel like if you knew you had a half sister growing up, you would just be curious about the person. Even if they never really came around a lot, wouldn't you ask questions about them? And it seems like she had a pretty open relationship with her dad. They seemed like they could talk. So even given that even if she was telling the truth, I had a half sister who I didn't really know. You weren't curious about them? You didn't ask about them? You didn't try to find out who they were since you did want a sister so badly? Lies, 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 and then some more. We end the whole situation with Ashley for a little bit until we talk about the wedding and why she wasn't invited. But we end the situation with Ashley where Ashley is saying that she and Samantha did eventually meet again, and they were trying to kindle a mother-daughter relationship, and that she had tried to express to her mom that Megan wasn't that bad, and that maybe her mom should not say so many negative things about Megan because Megan had always been a good friend to her. And Samantha apparently did not agree and would not be swayed from how she felt about it, and she doubled down on how she felt about it, and it really broke up the relationship between she and Ashley because she was annoyed that Ashley would take Megan's side. So there was bitterness there. But we leave off of that subject for just a second because Christmas has come around, and let's talk about what Megan's first Christmas was like. Again, we are getting some cognitive dissonance here, you guys, because you'll recall from the last episode that Megan said that Harry's family was cold and stilted. Snake-like is what they were. And she just didn't understand why they could never pull the mask down and why they always had to be so cold. But now we get to the first Christmas. We're getting a whole different version of what the family was like. She says that she called her mom, and her mom said, "How's Christmas?" And she said that it was just so fun. And these are her words. There was just this constant movement and energy and fun. But wait, I thought they were cold and stilted, cruel and hateful, mean. No personalities. But now suddenly there's constant movement, energy, and fun? From the cold, stilted dead people? Really? Wow. So glad they could be revived. Maybe it's your spicy ethnicity that has finally driven these cold Brits to bestir themselves and have a Merry Christmas. Okay, well, of course it was all destined to be spoiled though, because one relative wore a blackamoor brooch to the festive celebration and just really poured cold water down her back. Okay, let's just have a little chit chat about that brooch, shall we? Okay. Apparently, a relative showed up wearing this blackamoor brooch, which is, I'll show a picture. It is a brooch of a very dark black man, and he's wearing like a turban, and it's usually made with gold, diamonds. It's quite beautiful, actually. And the coverage in this documentary really goes to push the narrative that this was a super racist thing that this person did. They wore this brooch, but of course, could we even expect anybody in the royal family to even realize what they had done? Because they're so racist, and it's so ingrained in the habits of their ancestors that they wouldn't have even realized that it was a racist thing to wear this brooch. But you guys, the vast yawning ignorance of the people making this documentary is so shocking and so embarrassing for them that they would follow this really sad and sophomoric narrative that brooch is racist. It's the very opposite. A blackamoor brooch is made to celebrate the merchant class of the Moors, and they were next to royalty. These are beautiful. The features of the man of the guy in the brooch, they're not exaggerated. They're not ugly. Like, it's a super handsome face. And to wear that brooch, you wore that brooch to associate yourself with class and elegance, to associate yourself with this regal set of individuals. It was like a status symbol to wear a brooch like that. Those are the associations with the true origins of a blackamoor brooch. This is not the same thing as the 1920s to 1960s decorations that show black people with exaggerated red lips, big white eyes, stupid faces. Like, this was not a mockery of being black. This is like a celebration of being black. And the wearing of the brooch, I think, was this individual trying to celebrate, if she even thought about it as anything, if she even thought about Meghan Markle and race at all when she put it on, I think it was as a celebration of Meghan's heritage, but instead everyone wanted to say, oh, she's super racist because she wore it. She didn't put on blackface and dance a minstrel show. She didn't give Meghan a little set of salt shakers with, a mammy and, an Uncle Tom. It's like there was nothing about this that was supposed to recall something negative. It was a very regal and beautiful brooch. And the person in the brooch happens to have dark skin. Is it an embarrassment? Is it a shame? Is it a scandal to have black skin? What is happening? Why are we offended by this? I don't understand it. There's a huge focus on how the royals are racist by nature, and because of their ancestors, it's just a habit to be racist. And as they talk about it in the program, they show all of these different paintings and statues and things like that, with the express purpose of you making the connection that these can all be found in any royal palace. Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, any place that they want to surround themselves by iconography and imagery that would suggest Black people are beneath white people, and that white people are the oppressors and that Black people or people of darker skin are the oppressed, and they like it like that. But all the pictures that they show are not even anything that is even in any palace. Not even close to. They're images that can be found, paintings that can be found at national art galleries and in other museums, statues that can be found at other places, but not in the halls of the royal family. So it's just a super deceptive editing job. And they're fine with that. Then, of course, we have to get all into the unconscious bias. And this is where we have the real struggle session with Harry, who wants to get on and let you know what unconscious bias is. And maybe you don't know what it is, but it's actually nobody's fault. It's just one of those things that happens when you're part of a super racist family. But once you know about it, you have to educate yourself. And of course I did. Then he goes into this long thing about how one time he wore this Nazi uniform. And then when he realized that it had been a really bad idea to wear a Nazi uniform to a Halloween party, he began to repent 5 years later. So he doesn't add that part. But apparently he decided to go and talk to a rabbi and then flew all the way to Germany to talk to some Holocaust victims as a way of repenting for the wrong of wearing the Nazi uniform. Yeah, should he not have worn the Nazi uniform? You can make a case that that was a dumb decision. However, to then be like, I did the work to realize my unconscious bias. So you could do it too. You could be as good as me if you wanted to, but you've got to educate yourself. It's all about the education. You've got to change how you see the world. You've got to change who you are. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't flown all the way to Germany to talk to some Holocaust survivors, and if I hadn't gone to talk to the rabbi 5 years after I actually wore the costume, I never would have changed as a person. I'd probably still be wearing the costume to this day. All right, well, the other place where he got some lived experience was because he was part of the military, unlike every other member of his family. What? Yeah, he was part of the military and saw 2 wars. So just note that. I'd love for him to go talk to his grandmother, who was actually alive during World War II and actually made some significant contributions. But okay. Then they want to talk about how he was all about helping the world. She was all about helping the world. And then they decided to come and help the world together, which leads us to the Royal Foundation. And we get, the obvious talking points about how Meg was there to talk about real issues and everybody else wanted to just pretend like they were there to talk about real issues, but she wanted to talk about the Me Too movement and Time's Up. And everybody else was just too lame to actually talk about topical things. So that was her blunder, unfortunately. Here she was looking to actually change the world by telling you that women have a voice, they just need somebody to actually listen to them. Nobody cared about those profound words because everybody was too worried about, not doing and saying the wrong thing. But she's here to stir the pot, you guys. She's a mover and a shaker. Okay, she's an activist. Then we get, I don't even know how they made this transition. I didn't even follow this transition. But anyway, suddenly we're talking about how she's an activist, and we get footage of her getting ready for that event that she went to. It was like a veteran event, and she wore that ridiculously huge red ball gown. And it was a little bit criticized because the dress is very much a call attention to me. I want to show myself. Bright red dress at a veterans affair where it's really just not about her, So to have this look at me dress, it was raised some eyebrows if a person wanted to be nitpicky. What I think is particularly interesting and follows the same thing we've seen all throughout the series is that we are constantly being lied to through the editing. And through the production of this series. The filter that they put on this scene of her getting ready for that event is very washed out. It's very washed out. And so it makes the red dress pop much less than it actually did in real life, which is a direct reflection of the criticism they received for the color of the dress, right? Now, they do talk about color and how she wears color now. They don't say it explicitly. It's supposed to be obliquely that she now felt the freedom to wear color because there had been a time when there had been a boot on her throat that did not allow her to wear color back when she was a part of the royal family. So we're supposed to notice that she's wearing color, but we're all supposed to not notice how bright the color was and how inappropriate it was for the event. So we're gonna show you a very washed out version of this dress, but then talk to you too about how it was very fun that she could wear color now since she didn't get to use to. So you guys who want to criticize her about wearing the red dress, it's just that now she could, okay? And it had been really hard because before she had to wear oatmeal beige and white all the time. She wasn't allowed to wear color. And do you know why? Because all the other people who are more important got to wear color. But also because she's so meek, mild-mannered, and humble, the idea of having eyes on her was so scary. So she just tried to wear colors that would help her to blend in. And beige, oatmeal, and white are how you do that, you guys. Now, of course, we all know this is all just like a pack of lies because I don't need to reiterate to you how many times she wore color. Like, everyone has debunked this lie that she told in the documentary about how she only ever wore oatmeal, beige, and white. But I think the other thing that's super annoying is that in the documentary, they can't even find any other footage except for that one Christmas where she wore the brown hat and the beige coat. And they showed us 3 separate pictures of that event. But it's like, if all you could ever do was wear these washed out colors that were so unfun to wear, why am I only getting multiple pictures of the same event and you in the same outfit? You went to a lot of things, Meghan. Where are all those outfits? Right? So the documentary can't even back up what it's saying. The other thing, though, that is super ironic about this is that as she's telling about how she had been so put upon and how nobody would let her wear color and that she couldn't clash with anybody, so she only wore these washed out colors, she's literally sitting there in a gray sweater. Way to grab freedom by the balls there, Meghan. We transition on to the story of the wedding. The wedding is a really frightening time because so many things are happening at once, and it's also scary. Haters gonna hate, and they're sending her packages with white substance in it. So, frightening. Now, that would be scary, but also they don't tell us what was in the package with the white substance, and I think it was actually just flour. It was a joke. And unfortunately, there's going to be weirdos out there all the time who just want to stir up trouble, and this is by no means the first person who's ever experienced that. But Meghan says that because things were getting so scary, they were going to have snipers standing everywhere to pick off the terrorists that were likely to show up. And Harry, interestingly enough, does try to bring in a little reality here. And he interjects to say, well, I mean, it was a big event. And he's going to go on to say more like along the vein of, this is protocol. You know, we're always protected like this in an event like this where we're going to be in open carriages and things like that. And they cut right before he can finish his sentence because they don't want clarity and fairness here. They don't want him to point out the fact that that's just protocol, that the snipers weren't because Meghan had received a package of some unknown white substance that turned out to be harmless. They want you to think that there really was a reason for her to be this panicked and wringing her hands like this. But there's other things to contend with at this wedding situation. You know, Samantha Markle won't shut her stupid mouth, right? So she can't come. But if she can't come, then how is Meghan going to invite Ashley, the daughter of? Now, to me, this is not like some big conundrum. Everybody saw how Samantha was talking about Meghan. So if Meghan decided to elect not to have Samantha Markle, I don't think a lot of people would have been scratching their heads being like, that's a profoundly weird move. Would you want somebody to come to your wedding who can't stop talking negatively about you? Probably not. So I don't think there's anybody who would not have gotten that. The daughter got to come because you're friends with the daughter, but you're not friends with her mom. That happens in relationships all the time. But for whatever reason, she wants you to believe that she couldn't invite Ashley because the comms team told her she couldn't because it was too hard for them to explain. Because they were over there slipping on banana peels and falling face first into cream pies. And for them to have to explain why Ashley could come but Samantha couldn't was beyond their capabilities. So she was going to have to just disinvite the one family member who she had decided to invite. Ashley is over there believing it hook, line, and sinker and says that it was really hard for her because it would appear that the relationship had fallen to the wayside, but not as a result of Meghan being mean. It was just that was one of the things that had to happen because, her relationships were being controlled now, you guys. Ashley, by the way, has a lot of extreme vocal fry when she talks, and so it's really annoying. So I was led to believe that Meghan couldn't be friends with me anymore because her relationships were being controlled. It was really hard for me when Meghan called me and told me that she couldn't have me to the wedding anymore. Well, apparently they called her, they were in the car, and they decided to put her on speakerphone, and both she and Harry walked Ashley through this very difficult decision they had to make. And Ashley cries as she recalls it and says it was really hard for her because it was her mom's fault that, once again, her life wasn't turning out the way she wanted because her mom's just so bitter and hateful that now Meghan couldn't have her. Ashley, believe that if that's what you need to believe to get through life, but Meghan cut you out because she wanted to. Okay, well, for whatever reason, for some godforsaken reason, we got to keep talking about the colonizer narrative. I don't even know how they fit this one in. I have nothing in my notes that helps me understand why we're talking about this again. But now they want to talk about the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is just the Empire 2.0. And if you had been led to believe anything else, sorry that your history teacher failed you so badly. But it turns out that nothing has ever been better. Nothing, not one thing has been better because of the Commonwealth. I'm sorry that you were taught to believe that things had changed, but they actually haven't. Are you wondering why we're telling you that England is living high off the hog on the backs of the oppressed? Well, don't ask too many questions, but they are. You just might not know where the money is. Probably the royal family took it. Okay, then we get on to the fact that still everyone had great and high hopes for Harry and Meghan because maybe they could stitch together so many of the wounds created by the empire. Starting with this anniversary event of Stephen Lawrence's death. And Stephen Lawrence, as you'll recall, was beaten to death, stabbed to death, I believe, by a group of white people in 1993. And this tragic event means that not only are the 5 people who did this evil, but so is England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Because all of Great Britain has to pay the price for what 5 idiots did. But Harry and Meghan went to the service for Stephen Lawrence. And because they were finally willing to acknowledge that something bad had happened to a black person, maybe that means the royal family isn't always going to be so terrible. They've got the white savior Harry and his half-black wife that you didn't even know was black, but they're here now. So maybe now that they're noticing something that happened 25 years ago, maybe changes on the horizon. Okay, just for a quick pause in the cynicism, I would like to say that if you really thought that all of this was true, that Great Britain was this horrifically racist place, and you really had pinned all your hopes on Meghan Markle being the savior, I'm sorry you're so stupid. Because that's too great a burden for anybody to bear, let alone an American actress who just showed up on the scene. So for anybody to have pinned this much on Meghan and this much hope on one person, that's stupid. Even if you believed all of this was true, even if you believed England was a terrible place, and you were so happy that Meghan was here and that you thought maybe some fresh blood in the royal family was just what they needed, how could you put that kind of burden on somebody who doesn't know anything about your country, right? And who isn't super smart anyway? And just because she showed up at the opening of one well in Africa doesn't mean that she cares about the plight of people of color. And just because she went to India and threw around some pads and tampons doesn't mean anything. It does not mean anything. So why are you so disappointed that this person who never showed you at all that she was capable of great change, why are you disappointed that it didn't work out the way you are saying you hoped it would? Why did you think that? Okay, well, the next question is, where's Thomas Markle? Because that fat slob can't seem to manage to bestir himself to answer her phone calls. What's up? So apparently, as we know, and we talked about in great detail in Revenge, another plug for that book, but seriously, you guys, go watch that if you want more details. Thomas Markle was living a life in Mexico. Now, he had been a successful lighting director on Married with Children. So he wasn't like a nobody, but he'd retired and he decided to take his money and go live in Mexico where he could live better with his money. And he had a little bungalow and everything. And he had become a little odd in his old age, apparently. Kind of a recluse. And he wasn't taking great care of his health or whatever. Meghan, I think, didn't want him in her life because he is got a big personality. He's going to say what he wants to say. And he maybe wasn't this svelte figure that she was hoping to associate herself with. So she's more than happy to cut him out of the show. But he also is a very problematic character because he does things that are not okay, that are not acceptable to do. He decided to sell pictures of himself prepping for the wedding for $100,000. So that's a pretty sleazy move, I think, by anybody's estimation. You know, he says that he had not been treated well by Meghan ever since she got with Harry and ever since she got with the royal family. And he went first from hating Meghan, then he went to hating the royal family. He goes back and forth with whatever narrative's going to pay him the most when he calls in on TMZ. So he is a very problematic character in my book. But he sold the pictures. He lied to Meghan about selling the pictures. Once it came out, he became too ashamed to answer any of her phone calls because he was really embarrassed by what he had done. He knew it made him look bad. And then he did end up having a heart attack and he couldn't come to the wedding. Now, Meghan wants you to believe that there was something kind of questionable about the whole heart attack thing. Like probably he wasn't even sick. He's just like a deadbeat dad who couldn't show up for his daughter. And that's what she wants you to believe. And Harry is like,
Yeah, I shoulder the blame because, you know, she had a dad before she met me. Then I showed up and her dad's not here. So I guess that's my fault too. Probably because I wore that Nazi costume.
all right, so and that's where the episode literally ends because then it goes into the wedding and what that's going to be like, but that's next episode. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was a longish episode because it was just a lot to talk about, but and I could honestly probably keep talking about it, but I hear my family upstairs, so I've got to go and make breakfast. But it was good talking. I will see you guys later this week with parts 4 and 5 and 6, hopefully later this week. And then also we're still reading our book about the Mountbattens. So just as a plug for that book, if you guys think that that would be boring because it's, you know, ancient history, it isn't at all boring. It's shocking. It's shocking. And if you want something other than Harry and Meghan that also has to deal with two stupid people, the book Traitor King that talks about Edward VIII and Wallace Simpson was juicy details. That book shocked me, like truly blew my hair back on multiple levels. All right, let's talk later, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.